I've been really enjoying Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 for the past week, and today on Rayl Deal Games, I'm going to be talking about why I think this game would absolutely appeal to boomer shooter fans and fighting game fans, even if you don't normally go outside of those genres to play different games. Now, I know this is kind of a unique way to talk about this particular game because obviously the remake is designed to appeal to people who played the games previously, and I'm going to be talking about those fans as well. But I want to start talking about these two different genre fans, the boomer shooter fans and the fighting game fans, because they definitely make up the largest swath of my audience. So why is it then that this game would appeal to you if you're one of those fans? And I've actually got a couple reasons why. The first and foremost reason is because Tony Hawk's boomer shooters and fighting games are all products of the 90s. They have the same 90s design philosophy and a lot of arcadey type experiences, which I know boomer shooters aren't arcade games or anything like that, but they were designed around a gameplay first system for their core gameplay, where a lot of games in the 90s started to transition more towards like a story based or RPG based progression system. But boomer shooters, fighting games, and Tony Hawk's are mastery-based in their design focus. And mastery-based progression is pretty simple. It just means to progress in the game, you have to get better at playing the game. So to play a fighting game, if you're going to progress and get to the end of an arcade ladder or whatever, you got to get better at the game. And then when you're finished, and you've finished it on easy, you're going to up the difficulty and do it again. That's kind of like the progression loop of fighting games, and then eventually, or maybe from the beginning, you play against other people. For boomer shooters, it's the same thing. You progressively move up on the difficulty tier every single time that you finish the game, and then you get ultimate mastery of the game. And now these are things that you don't have to do, but it is the way that the game is designed, and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater was always designed that same way. And this mastery-based progression is split in two different ways in Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3-4. You've got level mastery, which is why I think it would appeal to boomer shooter fans, because there is a lot of enjoyment that you can get after playing a level again and again and again and finally mastering it, knowing the ins and outs and quirks of everything. And then there's also combo strings or lines that you do in Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3-4. And learning how to master these, I think, would appeal to fighting game fans. Now, will it appeal to all swaths of either genre? I don't really think so, because some fighting game fans aren't there for the combo strings, they're there for other things. But if you are into the Killer Instincts or the Mortal Kombats or other games like that are very combo focused, then that particular aspect of Tony Hawk's 3-4 would absolutely appeal to you. And then anyone who's into level mastery specifically, not just murder style levels where it's just you and a bunch of monsters and your whole thing is just running through the level to kill them all. If you're more into the actual raw design, the level design of a retro FPS, then that's what I'm talking about, because the levels in Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 and 4 are designed for you to play them multiple times through, over and over and over again, to get that mastery. The first time you play the level, you're not going to know where all the secrets are. And this really ties into the progression system for these games. So starting out, completing the base goals and even the pro goals for each level is really not that difficult. But then the real challenge comes with learning how to do them quickly within a minute and a half or whatever the case may be, which are the extreme level goals that you can get later. And something I'm very happy to see with the return of these Tony Hawk's games is the way that you have these harder challenges that get unlocked over the course of the game. I think we've kind of missed a lot in game design by not having unlockable content. You know what I mean? Unlockable content that doesn't require you to open your wallet. The type of stuff where you get rewarded for playing the game with more reasons to play the game. Old Halo games were great at this. Tony Hawk's has always been really, really good at this, giving you more and more reasons to keep playing. And I actually think the completion process for Tony Hawk's 3-4 is another thing that would appeal to the exact type of people that I'm talking to in this video. The type of people who get joy out of mastering something that's incredibly difficult. Low skill floor, high skill ceiling, that type of stuff. Especially if you're doing it guideless, which is what I did for my playthrough. But yeah, there's so many reasons to go through and complete the game. Now, there are some things where I wish that the collectibles that you got, the unlockables that you got were cooler. I wish that the apparel and the way that you can customize your customized skater were better. You can get cool stuff like Michelangelo from the Team NT series as a skater, and they included the Doomslayer and the Revenant from like the Doom franchise as alternative pro skaters that you could play as, but they have to be purchased. I think this was a big L personally, because the old Tony Hawk's games, you could unlock Spider-Man, you could unlock all kinds of stuff just by playing the game a lot. And I think that's what these modern Tony Hawk's games have really failed to do. It's a business thing through and through, and I'm not going to look a gift horse in the mouth and say this is a reason not to buy the game, because I'm just happy enough to have Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3-4. Bobby Kotick killed that one in its crib. I never thought we were ever going to see it. So I'm very happy that we at least get to play it, because it is a very solid game. It's just that it doesn't replace the original, which is going to be a reason that some people won't want to buy this. And if that's you, I think that's perfectly valid as well, because I think there's nothing wrong with wanting a company to at least give you what they were willing to give you before. For me, it's not a big deal because I have access to those older titles. I don't really have a problem or a bias against vintage game graphics, so that doesn't really bother me at all. I have no problem playing on an old system, and I actually like that this is different enough from the original that you kind of warrants playing both, in my opinion, for hardcore fans of the franchise. Sometimes I do think the Tony Hawk's Remake Quadrilogy possibly was pitched as one game that has all four, because they are very similar, both this and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2. I think it really was supposed to be classic Tony Hawk's collection, because it really does feel like the progression system, the challenges, feels like they were really going in that direction, especially with the way that they changed Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4 to fit in with the framework of these remake titles. Now, what I mean about that is that they cut the career mode, which has been a big killer for a lot of people. A lot of people don't want to buy this because of the loss of the career mode, and to be honest with you, I understand where you're coming from with that. I think the way they've designed the completionist requirements for this game makes it worth playing for that reason. However, the loss of the career mode is very obvious with Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4. The levels were very clearly designed with that career mode in mind, and when you get rid of it and you take it back to the 2-minute timer for the classic Tony Hawk's gameplay style, it really doesn't work for some of these levels. And by the end of my time with the remake, I really didn't like the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4 side of the equation as much as the 3, far more so than those original titles. I think the framing and the design of original Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4 worked better with the level design. That's very important to note here, because I do think that will impact the overall willingness and want that somebody might want to go through and complete all these levels and truly master them. So for me, this purchase, I feel very good with it. I'm excited to be able to go back to this and do some of those harder completion stuff in the future. So for me, this product was definitely worth the price tag. However, there are definitely things about it that I think will absolutely justifyingly make it something you don't want to buy, especially if Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4 is the reason you wanted this collection. I do think Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4 gets the raw end of the deal in terms of this conversion to the more modern game design. But regardless, if you're somebody who likes mastery-based progression, and the core thesis of this is that people who like mastery-based progression, which are typically boomer shooter fans, fighting game fans, character action fans, people who like that type of progression system will like this game. There's a lot of game here. It might be broken into 2-minute sections because it's a very arcadey experience, but you will be playing this for a long time. In the past week, I've logged 30 hours, and I'm not even close to the end of the experience after that amount of time. And to be quite frank with you, this game is something that I could see taking 60, 70 hours to get everything in, and that's before you even consider the fact that this game is highly replayable. I think the replay value of Tony Hawk's 3-4 is extremely high. This is one that I want to, work towards the completion of over the course of maybe the next 10 years. Playing a little bit here, a little bit there. This is the type of game that you can do that with, and honestly, I like those types of experiences. Some of my favorite games of all time are things that I played that way. And so if you're needing something, just a little palate cleanser from your preferred fighting game or a little bit of a different experience from the typical boomer shooter fare, but you want that to have mastery-based progression and you want it to be a little bit newer, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3-4 comes recommended for me for that. If you're a classic fan, it's a little bit of a 50-50 depending on what you're okay with them cutting. And, you know, there's a lot of reasons why I think somebody might not want this one specifically, whereas they were perfectly fine with Tony Hawk's 1 and 2, which foundationally changed the design of those games as well. And I'm going to throw it back to you guys. Do you guys like Tony Hawk's Pro Skater stuff? Do you like mastery-based progression systems? Did you like this video? Let's talk about it in the comments below, and while you're down there, do me a solid by smashing that like button, subscribing, and ringing the notification bell. I make new gaming videos every Wednesday and Friday about a variety of gaming topics, and you may like my other and future work. Regardless of what you choose to do, thank you for giving me this amount of your time today. I truly appreciate it. We're all busy people, and I truly value you wanting to watch to this point of the video. Thank you so much, and I hope I see you in the next one.